Hey everyone, Robert Ferringo of Doc Sports here with your sports betting weekly planner. It's always good to have a plan, right? Especially in sports betting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of time to break down what I am looking ahead at this week in both the NBA and college basketball. I will have a free play at the end of this video, and also be sure to click on the free 60 link down in the description that will take you to Doc Sports and give you $60 credit free to be used towards any handicapper, any package for any sport that you want. So, okay, first let's get started in the NBA because this is the last week before the NBA Cup playoffs next week. So it's the last week where we actually have kind of a set schedule. So there's three things that I'm looking for in the NBA this week that I'm going to have my eye on that may influence my betting later in the week. The first is just Tuesday, NBA Cup group play. Does anyone care about the NBA Cup? Really, honestly, it's still so new that I have not been able to formulate from a handicapping perspective what influence these games actually have on these lines and on the performance of some of the teams. We have seen some underdogs kind of overperform and overachieve. You know, Atlanta last week sweeping Cleveland, beating them in their NBA Cup game. We have seen some underdogs do well. Do these players care about this game? What about those teams that are already kind of eliminated from their group? This group play format, we see this in like soccer tournaments and stuff like that. And you get those teams that are already eliminated from their group, but still have to play out that third game, and they just kind of mail it in that effort. The difference here is that these games actually count towards regular season standings. So I'm really interested on Tuesday what type of effort level we are going to see across the league from the teams that are playing in these NBA Cup group play games. All right. Number two to keep an eye on, Orlando, Philadelphia. All right. I have been driving the Magic bandwagon all season long. I was on them first couple of weeks of the season. They started losing against the spread. Of course, I kind of backed off a little bit, and they have been on an absolute tear since then. They're probably the hottest team in the NBA. I have called this team kind of the Eastern Conference version of the Thunder last year, where it's a lot of good young talent, high-end young talent that's kind of finding their moment this season. I think they're going to be a moneymaker all season long, just like OKC was. Orlando, Philadelphia. Now, we all know about Philadelphia, about what a disappointment they have been this year, how bad they have been at the window this year. These two teams are going to play in Philadelphia on Wednesday, and then they play again on Friday. So we have that back-to-back series between one team that's Orlando, that's 9-1 straight up and against the spread in their last 10 games, playing against Philadelphia, who has been the worst bet in the NBA to this season. Is Philadelphia going to turn it on? Are they going to turn it around? Are they going to be able to stop this juggernaut? The last time that these two teams played was on November 15th. Orlando was a small 2.5-point favorite. That was at home. Okay. Obviously, the books were not up to speed on how good this team was and how bad Philadelphia was. Are they going to be road favorites? I imagine that they will be because of how these two teams have performed on Wednesday. Philadelphia, over the last 5 or 6 years, has been one of the better home bets in the NBA. Are they going to show up to play? Whoever wins that first game, is that going to influence the line on Friday? So looking ahead, that is a series that jumped out at me. I want to see what happens Wednesday, how that influences the number on Friday, and maybe we can make a move there. And then the third thing that jumped out at me in the NBA is the Golden State Warriors. They are a team to keep an eye on this week. All right. The Warriors have lost 4 in a row. They're 1-7 against the spread in their last 8 games. They have not been playing well. A lot of that has been injury related. They've been banged up, had some guys day to day, had some guys in and out of the lineup. They had their full arsenal in their last game, and I think that they are going to be healthy this week, but they really have 4 kind of marquee games going on. Tuesday, they are at Denver, playing against playing against the champions from 2 years ago, playing against one of the best teams in the West, playing in Denver, which is never an easy thing to do. Tough game at Denver on Tuesday. Then on Thursday, they're at home against the Rockets. Rivalry game at home, going to be in prime time. That's going to be a big game against a Rockets team that's playing really, really well right now. Then the Warriors have a home back-to-back series with the Timberwolves. They play them on Friday and they play them on Sunday. And just like with that Orlando-Philadelphia series, I'm really interested to see what happens in that game on Friday. Remember, Golden State has to play the night before against the Rockets, and Friday against the T-Wolves will be their third game in 4 nights. So that could have an impact on both the line and their effort level, even though this is a very deep Warriors team. And then what happens after the results from that Friday game? How will that influence Sunday's rematch for someone? So at Denver, and then 3 home games against the Rockets, and then 2 against the Timberwolves. I think the Warriors are going to be a team to watch this week. Maybe a little bit undervalued because they've been so poor against the spread in their last 8 games. Like I said, that's injury related. They're getting 3 home games. They're going to be a team to watch in the NBA. Okay, so if you're planning out your week of NBA betting, those are some things to watch. The NBA Cup games on Tuesday, Orlando, Philadelphia in their 2-game series, and then the Warriors in the 4 games that they play this week. Okay, now we're going to shift to college basketball. All right, and again, this is really where taking the long view with something like this, looking ahead a little bit is really, really beneficial, is in college basketball. All right, again, we're talking about 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, little more emotional volatility. You got those look-ahead games, those letdown games, and we're going to have plenty of both this week. All right, so 3 things I'm looking at in college basketball. The first is the ACC-SEC challenge. All right, this used to be the ACC Big Ten challenge, which the ACC always dominated, right? Always had a lot of success against the Big Ten. Well, they ditched the Big Ten. Now they're going up against the SEC. Here's the problem. The ACC kind of sucks this year. It's pretty bad. It's a pretty bad league. I know Duke and North Carolina getting all the love, and they should. They're good, talented teams. But this is as bad as I can remember the ACC. They are the 5th rated KenPom conference right now. The SEC is number 1. I think the SEC should dominate a lot of these matchups. But there is an X factor here that we really have to consider, and that is how will the teams that played in Thanksgiving week tournaments perform this week in these kind of marquee games? Who's still going to have that hangover effect, right? Think about it from your perspective, okay? You go on vacation by yourself, with your family, with your girlfriend, whomever. You go on vacation for 5 days, a week, go on a cruise, do something like that, come back on that Sunday night, and then Monday you're going to work. How effective are you really on that first Monday after a vacation, right? You're not at your best, okay? We have a lot of teams that were gone to some pretty exotic, faraway places last week, playing some high-intensity basketball. How are those teams going to perform this week across the country? All right, Tuesday, Georgia Tech is at Oklahoma. Oklahoma, big favorite. They're -12 in that game. They just won the battle for Atlantis, played great. It was an upset that they won that tournament. I don't think anybody predicted them winning the battle for Atlantis. But they played fantastic basketball for all 3 days and won that tournament. And now they're making that transition from being kind of scrappy underdog team playing against other high-end teams, winning that championship. Now they're dressing up as a double-digit favorite back from the Bahamas, a week in the Bahamas. How sharp are they going to be, really, against a Georgia Tech team that's kind of underachieving? It's just not very good. I think Damon Stoudemire will get it figured out there with the Jackets, but this doesn't look like his best team. So that's something to watch. We have Ole Miss going to Louisville on Tuesday. Ole Miss played in San Diego, played really well, had an upset win over BYU where they shot out of their minds, played out of their minds. Then they blew a lead. They were up 7 late against Purdue in the championship of that little mini tournament out in San Diego last weekend. Really high intensity game. I'm not sure if anybody watched that game. It was fantastic. End-to-end action, just high level execution by both teams. Ole Miss blew that game late. Are they going to have a hangover effect? Again, they come back from San Diego. Now they got to go back on the road to play Louisville in front of what should be a pretty excited crowd. Now, Louisville has its own issues, right? They lost in the battle for Atlantis finals. They're the team that lost to Oklahoma in that finals. Also, one of their key players, Keyshawn Pryor, got hurt in that. I still have not seen what his status is. Now, this is a deep Louisville team. I think they can withstand his injury, but he's one of their best players. Make no mistake about it. One of the best players on both ends of the floor. So are one of those two teams going to have a letdown? And if so, I think it's more likely that the road team does, because Louisville will be able to kind of feed off that energy from the home crowd. But we're going to have two tired teams that both came off disappointing losses in finals. Who's going to show up on Tuesday in this big game? Then next we have Kentucky at Clemson. I think Kentucky may end up as an underdog in this line. I think it's going to be ±1 either way. Okay. Clemson went to Daytona, played in their tournament down there, played really, really well. Kentucky, for whatever reason, didn't play in a Thanksgiving tournament. Okay. They were at home beating up on teams. So they're not going to have that hangover effect that we might see from some of these other teams. But they are going on the road. They are playing a tough, experienced Clemson team. And we're going to find out something about Kentucky playing a true road game for the first time. Wednesday in the ACC SEC Challenge, we have Auburn at Duke. Once again, Auburn won the Maui Invitational. Okay. Right now they're number 2 in the country. Got a bunch of votes for number 1. They're playing fantastic basketball right now, but they just got home from Maui. Now they're heading to Cameron Indoor, where Duke will be waiting. That's going to be a big game. Duke will be favored. I have Duke at -2 on the opening line in that game. So they'll be favored against the number 2 team in the country. What Auburn team is going to show up? And finally on Wednesday, Alabama at North Carolina. Both teams played in tournaments. Bama lost in the finals of their tournament out in Las Vegas. North Carolina lost twice out in Maui. Kind of disappointing for them. But again, that is a long trip from Hawaii back to North Carolina. Playing in front of the fans in Chapel Hill should get a little bit of a boost. Where's Bama going to be at? I think Bama is going to be an underdog in this one. I have North Carolina again as a 2-point home favorite. Both teams want to get up and down. It's going to be a fast-paced game. It's going to be an up-tempo game. Where are these teams' legs going to be at in the second half, considering the basketball that they played and the travel that they both endured from last week? So that's something to watch right there. All right. Number 2 thing, Big East Big 12 battle. Same thing. Big East teams playing against Big 12 teams. It's going to be great basketball. Wednesday, Baylor is at Connecticut. Connecticut should be a 3-point favorite. That's why I have this line. I have Connecticut -3. 2-time defending champions. They're at home. They have lost 3 games in a row. They may have lost their center. They were embarrassed by their effort out in Maui and by the things that their coach did out in Maui. So this is kind of a wounded Connecticut team. They are obviously not as good as they have been the last 2 years. That doesn't mean that they can't play. Baylor's a pretty good team. They also got blown out at Gonzaga to start the season. So this is going to be an interesting game to see if Connecticut can regroup. And I think that they're going to be favored in this game. Kind of an indicator line there. Also on Wednesday, we have Kansas going out to Creighton. I think Creighton will be a 5-point home underdog. They're 1-3 straight up and 0-4 against the spread. They did not play well last week. Creighton also welcomes UNLV on Saturday. So they have 2 big games. They host the number 1 team in the country. So they're going to be ready to play in that one. But are they good enough? I don't know that Creighton is good enough to beat these top tier teams. But playing at home, we should get an effort out of them. And then also on Wednesday in the Big East Big 12 battle, we have Marquette going to Iowa State. Marquette, number 5 in the country. Iowa State, number 6. Iowa State at home. Hilton Magic, baby. They're going to be about a 6-point favorite, which is going to be really inviting for people that want to bet Marquette. Be wary. Number 5 team in the country goes on the road, and they're a 6-point underdog. That's a little bit of an indicator line. But, again, Iowa State was one of those teams that played out in Maui. Played really well out in Maui. Still a tall task. Marquette did not play in a tournament last week. They should be fresher. But Iowa State's at home. They're going to have the crowd. They're going to be favored. They're a really good team. Marquette also has a big game against Wisconsin coming up this weekend. I don't think they're overlooking, Iowa State, number 6 team in the country. But that's something to consider, is that Marquette has 2 really big games. How are they going to play at Iowa State on Wednesday, and how is that going to influence the line when they're at home against in-state rival Wisconsin this weekend? So that's something to pay attention. And then number 3, the Big Ten and Mountain West Conference, they both start conference play this week. Big Ten got kind of kicked out of that ACC Big Ten showdown challenge, whatever you want to call it. Well, they decided this week their counter programming is that they are going to start conference play. That's going to be interesting. Tuesday, we got Michigan at Wisconsin. Wisconsin will be a 2-point favorite. Michigan's 4-2 straight up. And against the spread in the last 6 against Wisconsin. The home team in that series is 7-2 straight up and against the spread in that series. But the thing about starting conference play in both of these, both the Big Ten and the Mountain West, is conference play is completely different than the non-conference. It does not matter. You hear people, it's kind of a cliche, but it's also kind of true. Throw out the records when we get into conference play, right? And that's kind of the truth. Maybe teams have had disappointing starts to the season in the non-conference. Here's a chance to make up for it early in conference play against a top team. You're going to see some teams that have played really well. Maybe they're facing inflated lines here against these conference teams that have a little better scouting reports, know them a little bit better. Maybe you're a little bit more motivated because they know that this is a conference game, that this means something rather than random non-conference game against some schlub team. So pay attention to that. There's not a ton of great games. Again, I mentioned the Michigan-Wisconsin one. That one jumped out at me. Washington at UCLA, Pac-12, Pac-10, former, conference rivals are now playing, their first Big Ten game against one another. A little weird, but, we're over it. UCLA is 9-1 straight up in their last 10 games against Washington. They're at home. They're going to be a 12-point favorite. And they have a little bit of revenge because the last time these two teams played, they got blown out, 94-72 back in February. On Wednesday, Ohio State goes to Maryland. Maryland, if you haven't seen Derek Queen play, keep an eye on him. Ohio State blew a game at home to Pittsburgh, big non-conference game. Would have been a real nice win that they should have had that may come back to bite them come Selection Sunday. Where's Ohio State's head going to be at after losing at home, now going on the road to Maryland? And then, San Diego State and New Mexico, they both play 2 bad teams, Fresno State and San Jose State. They're both going to be big underdogs, 14, 15, 16-point favorites in those games. Going to be interesting to see if they can cover those big numbers in early conference games. Okay, and finally, things I'm looking for are some non-conference and some mid-major teams. Boise State, Tuesday, they just got back from a tournament in the Cayman Islands last weekend. Okay, that was over the holiday. This weekend at a neutral site, they play Washington State and St. Mary's, 2 big games for them. Smack in the middle on Tuesday, they play Utah Tech. How excited is this Boise State team going to be to play against Utah Tech in a letdown situation and a look-ahead situation? I think that they're going to be a big 24, 25-point favorite. Are they going to be able to cover that number? And then how are they going to play this weekend? Louisiana Tech is going to be a 12-point underdog at Memphis on Wednesday. Memphis playing very well. They were in Maui. They went to the championship out in Maui and lost. Are they going to bring that momentum back? This has been a big issue with Penny Hardaway as a Memphis coach, is playing up and down to their level of competition. Are they going to have that vacation hangover, right? As a double-digit favorite against a Louisiana Tech team that might be a little bit more excited about this game. Louisiana Tech can play. Pretty good mid-major team. Then finally, Gonzaga. I mentioned Kentucky a little bit earlier. They play that big game at Clemson. Not their only road game this week. They are going out to Seattle to play Gonzaga on Saturday. It's not on campus, okay? It's at a stadium out there. I think the Zags are going to be around -5.5, -6-point favorite in that game. As I mentioned, they blew out Baylor earlier in the season. Kentucky also went to a neutral site and beat Duke. Going to be a big game. How does Gonzaga play at Clemson? How does that influence the line on Saturday and influence their performance on Saturday against Gonzaga team that's lying in wait? So those are the things that I'm looking at this week. How do these teams respond from their tournaments last week? How do they respond in these marquee interconference matchups? What's the hangover like after that? These are all the things that you have to factor in when you're trying to handicap college basketball. It's not about just, looking at the board on Tuesday and being like, I like this team, I like that team, blah, 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 blah. You got to know where they're coming from. You got to know where they're going, because that's going to influence how they play on a day-to-day basis. Okay. So, all right. Thank you for listening to me. Now your free play. I talked a lot of college basketball. I'm actually going back to the NBA for your free play. This is a Tuesday free play. Take the over 211.5. Philadelphia at Charlotte. Philadelphia has scored 110 or more points in 4 of their last 5 games. Start to get it going on the offensive end a little bit. Now, Charlotte is 0-4 against the total in their last 4 games. That actually came after they went on a 5-0 run against the total, right? So the books over adjusted. Charlotte kind of came back to earth. I think the pendulum is going to swing the other way here. This isn't a good defensive team, either one of them. Okay, Philadelphia is number 28, I believe it is, number 26 in field goal defense. And Charlotte, they just don't play any defense at all. They give up 120 points on the regular. They're 2 slow teams. I understand that neither one of these 2 teams plays at a very fast tempo, and they've both been bad offensively. Charlotte's number 30 in field goal percentage offense. Philadelphia's number 29. I think they're both going to perform a little bit better. I think that if Philadelphia gets up near, we're talking about a number at 211.5, okay? So if Philadelphia gets up around 110, that's not asking for a lot out of Charlotte. So take the over in that game on Tuesday. All right, that is your weekly planner from me, Robert Ferringo. Be sure to go to docsports.com. Be sure to check back next week for more videos. In the meantime, carpe diem and good luck.